Welcome everyone to the meeting on Pay for Success. Go around the table starting with Ms. LaFrance,
Suzanne France, Austin Davidson,
Christopher Costa,
John Weddleton,
Felix Rivera,
Gonzalez Hoffman,
Pete Peterson,
Jason Bockenstedt.
Nancy Burke,
Dean
Crystal
Gates, Super
Kennedy.
Council.
Crystal Kennedy. The mayor is with us, and we have a bunch of people in the back who are with the Civic Engagement Group. Academy. Can you wave at us and welcome? There's a bunch of you. Way to go. It'd be lonely without you. Okay, so today it's Jason, you're presenting, and Nancy Burke. Okay. Take it away.
All right. Well, thanks. We are very excited to talk about this Pay for Success program, Home for Good, and how we believe that this is a really new and innovative way for us to get the outcomes that we want in the realm of homelessness and mental and substance abuse treatment. So I'm going to run through just a couple of things that I want to run through today. Just a quick overview of Pay for Success. I have a little short 5-minute video just explaining Pay for Success. It's the best explanation that I have found on it, so that hopefully everyone understands what it is. Then we want to talk about what our Pay for Success program is, and that's Home for Good. So I'll go through some of the eligibility and other criteria that we're thinking about for it. Going to have a little short discussion about the current pilot program that is ongoing, that's informing a lot of the information and how we're moving forward with the proposal that we have in front of you. And then just briefly talk about the 2 ordinances that will be before you guys on March 24th. And then a little bit of a coming attractions update for you guys for past March 24th. So, going to get into Pay for Success, but as I promised, here's a short little 5-minute video that I want to play. See if I can.
Turn off the volume on our speakers.
Sorry, I actually have an IT person up here right now. I'm going to have them come in and try to help. I can't put this to load on the screen.
You want to move on to the next thing?
No, because I think this is going to be an important piece of understanding the overall program and why we're proposing this. So hopefully it'll just be 2 seconds.
Last time I gave a 5-minute, he said I took it back 30 seconds later. So
It's here. I tried unplugging and plugging it back.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to get this to play.
I might actually like that. what I've learned. I'm like,
Wow, well, you have all
wow,
the,
that's a lot.
you have all the stems. Well, I put it in. It was, on the side, with
Yeah.
lime and everything.
I guess it was
Yeah,
very
I-
coronavirus friendly. I just like pulled some out.
Oh, okay.
I just want to replace the touch it.
Yeah.
Kids are frowning down upon you right now.
Oh, they just, oh, well.
Hopefully we have.
I mean, that's what I use, but that's pretty much.
That's what I was gonna
Set on the right wall for the projector, but we just had it playing.
So I wonder while we're at ease here, if one of the students could come and tell us about your program, or all of you, and someone? Civic engagement, what is that?
Do you want me to describe it for a minute, because while we're waiting, because you're gonna meet
Sure,
with
why
them
not?
on Friday.
Okay.
But this is a group of 9 high school students from all over town, and we have 3 goals. We are looking to expose the students to potential career opportunities. So some of them have expressed an interest in running for office. We are hoping to, yeah.
It's a very dicey career.
We want to show the students what it takes to run a city. So after we leave you today, and we apologize because we have to duck out early, we're going to go to the airport. We're doing things like going to the port, we're going to the hospital, we're going to KTUU. So we'll come visit you. And just different stuff like that. And then the third thing that we want to do is really spark a sense of community and what it means to build a community. And this is our second time running it. It's a partnership between the municipality and the museum. And this is our second shot. We did this last summer for 2 weeks, and we decided that we would do it over spring break this year. So it's a great program. We had one of the students from last year now as an intern at the mayor's office. And so we're hoping that we can, and so if any of you ever need interns, here's your batch. And also, if you want to talk to them on Friday about the Youth Advisory Committee, that'd be great as well.
Next Friday.
Good, thank you.
That's right, we do.
And it's part of welcoming Anchorage.
Because I didn't know that they would necessarily be
Did you know our boy?
It is spicy though. Well, it's something. Yeah, it's good. Do you like it? I don't know. I'll look up top cost. Oh, because that's what it's called. Okay. I've never made it.
Yeah. So you know, you just use that.
Trying to figure out a flavor.
It's got a really good.
Trying to figure out a flavor.
No, I worked for State Organization that had
So,
Oh, I'm hearing from there.
I think it's called Golonga.
Golanga, never heard of it, okay. Oh, Golanga?
Mira, Golanga, is that the spice?
It says chili oil.
Chili oil.
Yeah.
Doesn't he shouldn't have to use the-
Gala gala.
Ganga.
It's kind of like.
There we go.
And this recipe definitely spicy with chili oil.
Oil, I've never heard of chili oil.
Just like that red oil.
This is really, it's very, isn't it good? It's not spicy, but it's flaky.
Can you just give these Euro to all Roger on the Page of Success Initiative?
We're here now.
Oh, there's some progress there.
There's
right?
progress. I think we're ready.
Okay, yeah.
In America's towns, cities, and states, government agencies fund a wide range of social programs that aim to improve outcomes for citizens. Outcomes like stable housing, increased employment, and better education.
Yet many of these programs have relatively little evidence behind them. We often don't know whether they are all that effective at delivering the results we want. And changing the status quo isn't easy. Trying something new and innovative carries risks and costs for government agencies with no guarantee of success. To break this status quo, what might be needed are new disruptive innovations, mechanisms that help shift that risk, elevate the role of evidence, and bring together a range of different partners. One potential candidate is something called Pay for Success. Pay for Success, sometimes called social impact bonds, is still a relatively new concept. But in other countries, such as the United Kingdom and Australia, and a handful of places in the US, Pay for Success projects are getting attention as a way to deliver better outcomes for communities. Pay for Success works like this. An outside funder, like a foundation or a bank, provides capital to cover the upfront costs of a social program. The program is implemented by a service provider, and if the program meets or exceeds pre-agreed outcomes targets, the government repays the funder with interest. In theory, Pay for Success deals can be win-win-win. Better outcomes for vulnerable populations, stable funding for service providers, and potential cost savings to the government. Let's look at an example. Say you live in Denver. It's a great place to live. You have the Rocky Mountains, fresh air, powder during the ski season, and the Broncos are the 2016 World Champions. But like a lot of American cities, Denver faces challenges serving its homeless citizens. The city isn't interested in a short-term solution that only gets people off the streets for a few nights. We'd rather have a lasting solution that helps people turn their lives around. But it's complicated. Nobody wakes up one morning to discover there's no roof over their head. There are often many simultaneous issues at play. Ultimately, many chronically homeless people cycle in and out of shelters, emergency rooms, and jails, creating not only a moral challenge for cities, but an expensive one. And none of these are good long-term. Researchers have been studying for years what works in fighting homelessness, and from this growing mountain of evidence, a potential solution has arisen: permanent supportive housing. The evidence not only suggests that this solution works, it offers lessons on the best way to deliver it to recipients. So now Denver has a potential solution for a better way to fight homelessness, but it still has a different problem. Programs like permanent supportive housing carry expensive upfront costs that can be daunting. Even if you have all the evidence in the world, it's still scary to take that risk, especially if you're a cash-strapped local government. But what if there was a way that private funders and philanthropies could pay for the upfront costs of a potentially game-changing supportive housing program? What would that look like, and why would they do it? This is where Pay for Success comes in. From Denver's perspective, by shifting the program's financial risk to these outside funders, a major barrier to adopting innovative solutions is low, and a promising new intervention gets funded. From an investor's perspective, they're betting on potential solutions to their community's woes, in the hopes of seeing problems get resolved, while also potentially earning a return on their investment. Once the program is fully implemented, Denver and its partners are ready to evaluate it. The evaluation, in turn, yields evidence on whether the program met its target outcomes and whether those outcomes prove the program is a bona fide success. On top of that, the evaluation adds to that mountain of permanent supportive housing evidence and deepens the understanding of policymakers in Denver and beyond. Bottom line, more people will know more about what works and what doesn't, so that other cities can build on what Denver did. This example from Denver, which is based on a real-world project, demonstrates how governments can overcome a status quo where evidence-based programs are rare. Even better, the Pay for Success project shows how research can inform policy and practice in 3 critical ways. By looking at the evidence base to find a solution, to inform project design and implementation, and to expand the broader evidence base of what works through further evaluation. In our quest to make evidence-based policy making in government the new status quo, Pay for Success is a potentially powerful new path forward.
So everyone knows what Pay for Success is now.
I was watching that ham move. Is there something else going on?
You know, and as I move forward in this, the video was made in 2016. So Denver has now had 3 years of experience with this, and their program was designed to potentially house 330 people that were caught up in the homelessness and jail cycle. As of the end of the year, 80%, almost 80% of the people that were in this program are still in housing. And an additional 10% have either left for a variety of reasons and have re-entered again. The others are, they're folks that the remaining 10% have, either died. Some have ended up in jail or have just voluntarily dropped out. But 80% success rate on this program is great, and something that we should shoot for. So I do want to just kind of run through kind of the process real quickly. So obviously we're going to start. We're going to try to get investors, and then we're going to have an intermediary. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, social finance is our intermediary, along with United Way. And one of the goals that we're going to work with them on is they're going to help us structure, coordinate, and manage the risk and figure out what are the outcomes that we want to see and what we would be willing to pay for said outcomes. And once we have all of that in line, we'll have our social service providers that will actually deliver services to the target population. And again, we'll go over what the target population is. And then as we're going through this, we will also have an independent third-party evaluator, look at and measure and validate both all of the outcomes versus what we said we want to see. And at that point, it comes back to the back-end payers or the outcome payers that if the Assembly approves all of this, the MOA will be one. We hope that as we talk more, that we obviously have an outstanding federal grant application, and we also, as part of the legislative program this last year, have a request to the state to also be an outcome payer. So once all that happens, and it's measured and it's validated that we have achieved at least some portion or all of the outcomes that we wanted, we repay the principal and potentially a slight return if we're super successful to the investors. So what does our program look like, and what are we thinking about, and what target population are we looking to serve? So we've come up with some eligibility requirements of how we want to frame this. Essentially, one of these pods of people that we want are those that are persistently homeless. So they have to meet the HUD definition of chronically homeless. They have to have been homeless at least once in the last 3 years, or homeless for 12 months cumulatively over the last 3 years. So in Anchorage, that gets us, we have about 1,294 people that meet that criteria alone. But that's not the only criteria that we want to do, because we want to hit the folks that are the hardest to help. So the second criteria or eligibility requirements that we have is there has to be a history of recidivism in it. What does that mean? There has to be 2 or more arrests in the last 3 years and at least 1 within the last 12 months. So when we add this requirement on top, the total number of folks drops to 597 that meet both the persistently homeless and have a history of recidivism. And the final eligibility requirement that we are looking at are those that are high users of services. So they have a history of high cost utilization of crisis services, they're in the emergency room a lot, or they have significant health and behavioral health challenges that require AFD to constantly have EMS transports, or they're constantly taxing the system of the Anchorage Safety Patrol. So when you bring all 3 of those together, we get a number of about 373 people that meet all 3 of those criteria. So 373, but we do know, because we know who these people are, that what is the worst, or the top 100 look like in terms of each of these areas. And these are the ones that we're going to want to target immediately, because as we'll go through, they're the highest utilizers of cost and services. So the top 100, the average number of days over the last 3 years, the top 100 was 373 people. They've been homeless an average of 333 days over the last 3 years. They've had, on average, 10 arrests from APD over the last 3 years. And they've averaged 16 AFD EMS transport over that time. So now when you pull it up to the full 373, what does it look like? Average number of days homeless when you include all 373 is 218 days. There's been an average of 7 arrests, an average of 9 AFD EMS transfers. So this is the target population that we want to help. And just for background, I think many of you are aware of a previous program that we had that we called Path to Independence. Just so everyone is aware, Path to Independence and Home for Good, we're talking about the complete opposite spectrum of people that we're trying to help. Path to Independence were those that were, I consider the easiest to help and get out of homelessness. They had a few bad things happen in their life, maybe lost a job for a couple of months, but didn't necessarily have a lot of the challenges that this group has. So we're talking about the complete opposite spectrum of folks. So as part of this, how are we hoping to help them be successful and achieve the outcomes that we want? Well, the biggest one is through intensive case management. And what does that look like? Essentially, it starts with assertive outreach and engagement. We need to be able to build a bond and build trust with these individuals so that we can engage and recruit them and into this program. Part of it is, we're offering an opportunity for affordable housing, but we're also offering them the opportunity to have health and social services provided to them. So this is the first step, but not the only part of the intensive case management. The other is housing first. One of the things that we're going to want to do as we get people on board with this is we're going to want to house them immediately. And again, this is where I'm going to come back to the commitment from Rasmussen, Primera, Providence, and Widener of $40 million. This is an area that they want to help us provide additional housing for these people, so that we can immediately, when they say they're ready, we immediately have some place for them to go and get off of the streets. What does that mean? We also want to be flexible with them. We know that they're just starting this journey with us, but we also want to make sure that they have some amount of independence as well, so that they have their own place to go to. The other one is person-centered care. I think one of the good things about this, as we're turning this over and letting the private sector do a lot of this, is it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. We want it to be customized to the individual. Every individual is different. One might have drug or alcohol abuse addiction. One may have mental health issues. We want to make sure that what we're providing them in terms of services is customized to them, but also comprehensive. Part of this is we want to also make sure that they have meaningful opportunities to engage in the community, and that can range from providing volunteer opportunities as we move through this process, figuring out ways if they want to figure out how to re-engage with their family. And I'll add here, one of the key components of this, and I think Nancy verified this, as I mentioned earlier on path to independence, in terms of the engagement level of social workers to the number of individuals that they're helping. Path to independence was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 30 or 1 to 35. For this program, we want to be like 1 to 10, and that's pretty close to the national the average, in terms of having one social worker for every 10 clients. We want them to be engaged and helpful on a very intimate basis. Harm reduction is obviously going to be an important aspect of this as well. We want, obviously, some of these people are going to have huge substance abuse issues. And we want to figure out how do we better manage that substance use and reduce the harmful consequences. We want to make sure that we're setting goals for them and as we move through this. But a part of this is we're also, because they're in housing, we want to work with them to actively try to prevent evictions. And then the final piece that's important is, as a result of this, we're going to try to integrate all of the primary and behavioral health care into this so that folks are getting the healthcare services that they need, so that they actually are trying to fix the underlying issues that they might have.
Thanks, Mr. Compton.
Jason, you keep saying we. Can you define we?
Well, I think this is, by we, I mean the community, but, as we walk through this, if we're, the actual people that are going to be doing it are the social services providers that we bring on board to actually carry this out. But I think all of us will have a certain amount of responsibility to make sure this is successful.
That we bring on board. So there's two we's there. One is community of providers,
Yep.
One is us. What's our role in this?
What do you mean by our?
The community.
Okay, just clarify.
No, but I'm asking a serious question because speaking in the royal we are not going to provide all of those things. We can't, but I understand there's some other we going on here. So it'd be nice to understand what our part is and then what this royal we is.
Sure.
The document that went in with the AO and AMs has a chart that we tried to lay out. The initial grant was, the application to HUD was United Way, and Michelle Brown and Eric Glad are here from United Way, with the municipality supporting that application. So the design and setup of this project has been a partnership between United Way and the municipality. As we go forward into our contract, the municipality is going to just be paying for the outcomes. So the municipality won't provide the services. All the contract for services are with United Way. So the we is still in our brains. We're supporting this whole process launching. But it's important for Assembly and for all of us to remember that the outcomes are the product that the municipality is purchasing, and there is support for United Way and social finances as we stand it up.
Sure. Thank you. Great, thanks. So we have a few other questions. Should we let you go through finish
No.
here? Or just go ahead and dive in.
Sure.
Take this all down.
Okay, I was holding this, so I have a couple. I apologize. Do you know how much the total funding to Stand Up Denver was? What their city commitment was?
We will get that at the very end. I actually have
Okay,
that
great.
as a slide.
Similarly, on the criteria for arrest, does it, one, matter the outcome, and what about number of police contacts that don't result in arrests? Because we do have an active initiative with the police force to identify those that are in need that may not result in arrest, because we know they're just going to cycle in and out.
To answer your first question, it will be somewhat dependent, I think, on what the outcome is, because if the person is in jail, they can't participate in the program. But outside of that,
I can ask a better question, I apologize. Does it matter if charges were ultimately brought or not?
No.
No, and it doesn't matter also then if you're referred to like a therapeutic court?
correct.
Okay, all of those would still be qualifying individuals?
I think the kernel that we might say is the municipality's interest in this project is that we reduce the amount of time that these folks are cycling through our services. So that's why contacts and arrests were included in our data, because these folks are tying up valuable time that could be used for better uses in the community. So it does not matter. It's about the amount of time they're cycling through our services.
So I want to restate that to make sure I understand. It's your APD contacts, and then we also have the AFD and AASP contacts, but the word arrests really refers to our cycling through contacts with APD.
No, it's both. It's arrests and contacts.
It's arrests and contacts. So you actually have to have been arrested to be eligible.
The DOJ is a
Okay.
requirement. That's a requirement of the HUD and DOJ grants.
Okay, great. One more question, if I may, Chair. When we talked about prevent evictions, is this not no-fail housing? You can fail out of this?
Yes.
You can, so you can get evicted, so you're still under the normal landlord-tenant requirements. You have to follow the terms of your lease. Hopefully case management will help you do that, but you could still fail out.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that'll be something that we talked about a little bit later too, in terms of what other communities have done in terms of setting up how they ultimately decide what outcomes they want to pay for. It's usually based on the number of days that they're stably housed, and if they are evicted or fall out, that obviously doesn't count towards that outcome.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you know, the fact that we just had a couple-hour meeting with the school board, and Ms. Salatel mentioned an individual education program for her daughter. It made me think that what we need is an ISP for these homeless individuals, an individual success program. So that, because unfortunately, many people in the community think that the homeless problem, when they see it all as one group, that they all have the same problem that we could solve with one fell swoop, and that's not the case. These are all individuals, they all have different backgrounds, and they all have different needs. And so if we could find an individual success program for each of them, we could make progress on this issue. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Mr. Constant.
Thanks. Just back to Salatel's kind of point on the lease and the potential for eviction. All of our Housing First projects come with that same constraint, right? They're all private operators with lease agreements that they work really hard not to have somebody knocked up. Is that correct? But really, in the end, they still have to comply to some basic fundamental social norms. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the whole concept about the kind of programs that we want to develop and how we want to judge whether or not they're successful in that. But I want to follow the money. To me, this is more of a financial nuance that I'm not sure I completely understand. And that is, what amount of money does the municipality end up being on the hook for, regardless of what's considered successful or not? So my understanding is that we're basically asking organizations to invest, and we are basically being the investment banker, so to speak, because we're going to pay them a return on their investment plus the principal. So we're not providing the services, but we're encouraging the providers to do a good job and do what we're asking them to do according to this plan that we have. But at some point when they say, hey, we did great, we're very successful in what we did, now the muni has to pay us. Are you just saying with the 4.9 million, I can't remember what it is. Thank you. There it is, yeah. So with that full amount, that is the extent to the municipality's investment. So we are basically only going to say we're going to put $5 million into the community, and we will, if they do a good job, then we will actually go ahead and also give them interest or have you done a good job?
The total amount that we would be in for is 4.5 million if they met every single outcome that we set, which would be a great outcome. It would have actually, I think, significantly improved Anchorage.
And then if there is not the desired outcome, we're basically not going to pay anything.
Correct. But that, again, is all going to be verified and looked at by the third-party evaluator to make those decisions based on what were the outcomes and what did we say we would pay for.
Okay. And can I, another question? Just in terms of the mechanism then for investing, is this something that's basically, this opportunity sold in the bond market, or is this strictly an arrangement with the individual providers and whatever financial revenues they have, that's just kind of their own thing? Or is this something that somebody can say, hey, I'd like to throw in $100,000 toward this and get some kind of return? Is that something that's traded on the bond market?
I don't know if it's traded on the bond market, but my understanding, and social finance, I think, is on the phone with us, but I think they have a ton of experience in this, and they go out to just investors, be it banks or, I would assume, wealthy individuals, and say, hey, we have this opportunity, would you like to potentially invest some of your money? I don't know if they have a requirement in terms of what the total amount you would have to be willing to put up.
Okay, well, that would be my question then, because to what extent are we on the hook for a potential rise in the interest return? So if this is if you're getting a 3% return on your money, is that nailed down, or could it all of a sudden be 6% or 8% because the bond market or whatever investment market is doing better? So that would be a question too.
Yeah, I think Annie Deere with social finance might jump in and answer that question.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Annie Deere with social finance. And so the word bond is really a misnomer here. These projects are not traded on a bond market. It's the core feature of the project is this performance-based contract that defines all the terms of the project, and that includes the required funding flows. And so this wouldn't be subject to interest rate changes. All of the exact financial commitments would be defined upfront in the pay for success contract, and it's not subject to the broader market conditions.
Okay, thank you. Then can I add just?
Sure, why not?
Thank you. Then typically, if somebody's investing in this, what would be their expected return rate?
I might defer to Annie, but my understanding is that it differs from project to project depending on what the either municipality, city is willing to pay for and what they want their outcomes to be.
But don't we have to establish that in order to find out, or in order to determine how much money we're actually going to be putting toward this?
Absolutely, and that
Okay.
is going to be part of the coming attractions.
Because we've got a cap, we've got a limit. You're just asking about the interest rate, right? Yeah.
The total
It's
amount,
like a percentage.
the
like
total
less than-
amount, if everything went right.
She wants to know the interest rate.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't think we can say that right now because that's still something that needs to be negotiated between the potential investors that we get and what are the outcomes that we're looking for in terms of, if we get 60% of the folks that are housed versus 80% versus 100%. I think a lot of that is still to be determined.
Okay, but it still has to be reflected, it still has to be driven by the cap of $5 million that we're basically approving.
Correct.
That's right, Jason. If I could just add one thing, I think the wrinkle to add here is that the municipality is actually not standing alone as the outcome payer in the way this project's designed, and so we still have some uncertainties around the exact amount of the total outcome payments, and so that's why we don't have a set, rate of return for the project. It also depends on the total project risk profile. So we do have this defined act of municipality's commitment, but the full picture is still being filled in.
So is that something we can track and monitor? How do we monitor that and know what those numbers are once they get contracted?
Well, one of the pieces that we still have to do is negotiate what that final contract looks like. And as we'll discuss later, we have to bring that back to you guys to approve us entering into said contract.
Okay.
And you will see what those material terms are in terms of what we're saying we'll agree to pay and at what amount.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We cheated you out of a substantial amount of time, and we're scheduled to 1:15, which isn't going to work. So how much time do you need for just your presentation?
Maybe another 10 minutes.
Another 10?
Yeah.
So we have a motion to extend to like 1:30.
Move to extend till 1:30.
Second. Any opposition? Okay. Mac.
Thank you. So, while we're on the money piece, I guess, if we're on the money piece, it says that the total upfront needed to make this go is $7.5 million and 30,000 additional dollars. And why are we contributing then $4.5 million when we have two other funding partners? It's not quite like in thirds.
Correct, and we actually have a slide on
Okay,
that,
great.
so we'll get to that one.
Okay.
Just finish this. Obviously, the intensive case management aspect of it is a very comprehensive approach, and we want to provide all of the services necessary to make sure that we're successful. And obviously, we went through this already, but I kind of went back and filled in kind of everything for us. So the intermediary for us is Social Finance and United Way. The current providers from the pilot program year are South Central Foundation and Rural Cap are the providers that are providing the services to the target population in the pilot year. And then as we move into the Home for Good program, NPC Research will be our third-party validator. And then as we move up to the outcome payers, obviously we have MOA. As I mentioned earlier, we have a federal grant right now that's pending, SIPR grant, that is more on the medical side, that we're lowering the medical costs. And then the Mental Health Trust, the hospitals and philanthropies. And I will say that, I think I can say this publicly, that Rasmussen, Mental Health Trust, and Providence have all also committed $500,000 each to be outcome payers. So there's an additional $1.5 million from them that are coming as outcome payers, in addition to the $4.5 million that we would be putting forward.
Austin?
Thank you, Mr. Wellington. Okay, so $1.5 million, and then we would pay $4.5. That's $6. So that's more than we need. Can you run through all the numbers? I also want to know in these other communities, what percentage is typical of success? And I'm sure that depends on how you define success. But what number do we sort of have in our head that like, oh, usually 70% is the amount we're paying? Because for us to know sort of, and then where do you think that portion that the unity's paying is coming from?
80%, to answer your last question about success, 80% is kind of the national benchmark
Okay.
that we shoot for. But here's kind of let me walk through this. Sure.
Well, oh.
When you're done with her questions.
Are you done?
Well, I think he's answering my question, but
I
after
was on
that.
the previous slide, but you can come back. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So this is, let me walk through this. So the total project cost, we believe, for 3 years to handle 150 to 190 people through this program is going to be about $13 million total. So that's about $6 million for the intensive case management services and some other items, about $5 million on the housing side. And then there's the paying for the evaluator and transaction management, structuring, and some contingency. However, out of that $13 million, we believe that a little over $5 million of that will come from other sources, and the biggest ones are housing vouchers that will come through in the amount of about $3 million, and that we'll be able to bill Medicaid for quite a bit of the health services that will be provided. And then there's also the previous HUD DOJ grant that we have received to offset the project and management costs. And then the CIPRA, the pending grant that I mentioned, some of that would be towards that. So that's where we get to the $7.5 million number in terms of what is actually still needed for us to be able to move forward. So obviously we've said there's $1.5 million committed from private philanthropy towards this. Ours would be $4.5 million, and we still have the outstanding federal CIPRA grant and the outstanding state grant request. Obviously, if every single one of those came through, we would go well above $7.5 million. That is not a bad thing, because what that would allow us to do is continue to expand the program to more than just 150 people. If we were lucky enough that we put in 4.5, the state put in 4.5, we got more from private philanthropy, and we received the HUD or the CIPRA grant, we would expand from 150 people upwards. Does that answer your?
Yeah, I have a question that's not about money, so let's let Chris go.
Thanks. It's in two parts. From our perspective, to get into the payment methodology, how we approve expenditures into this program, is it a one-time, here's $5 million and run away, or is there a regular process? That's the first question. What is it? Then the second question is, on the previous this slide, you identified 2 vendors as your pilot entities. What was the rationale behind these 2? Is this a sole source opportunity for them? How is that piece working? So those are kind of the 2 questions that rise up to me on the financial piece.
I might allow Michelle at United Way to answer that, but it went through a competitive process to award to South Central Foundation and Rural Cap, but I'll let them maybe expand on that a little bit.
Correct. It was a request to participate, and it went out for both housing providers and case management providers. And I recall there were about 11 to 13 applicants, and there was a selection committee, and those were chosen as the ones to start working with in developing the pilot, and then they would be the ongoing providers. That doesn't mean that there won't be further requests for proposal if we are scaling up, need more providers, changing the circumstance. But that was the method, was an open request, an open call for participation.
And to answer your first question, the answer is no. This is not. These 2 ordinances are not the final go, no-go decision from the Assembly. That will come later. The final go, no-go decision from you guys is going to be when we ask for authorization to enter into the contract. If you guys say yes, that is going to lock us into whatever the outcome payments are that we're agreeing to within the contract.
One time, or will they be regular authorizations for payments? Like we authorize the contract, and then we have
one time for those 3 years.
Because it'll be moved into an account that will.
Yep.
All right, thanks. And who else?
But I will add that, you know, we'll talk about this later too, is, you know, one of the things that we will be doing is providing semi-annual updates to you on what those outcomes were, so that you're fully informed on the progress or success that we're having.
Okay, do you want to go through, finish this, or do you want right now?
Well,
Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. You know, one thing we have to keep in mind is what we're hoping to do is to save the municipality money through not having to use our emergency services for these individuals on a daily basis, sometimes many times in the same day. And so, yeah, we may end up having to pay a little interest here or there, but the potential savings are much, much higher than our potential costs, especially in the long run. Thank you.
Continue. Okay, we'll go to Austin. We're gonna run out of time, folks.
Well, I mean, I think this is really important,
It is
so
very
we were,
important.
not Mike, I mean, in general, for us to get our questions answered, I mean, we might have to have another work session if we can. Now I forgot what I was gonna ask. What's the question? So, one thing that we've struggled with, I've asked Nancy, and I think she's been unable to produce it in part because it's hard, but, a chart or something that describes all of the costs that the muni spends on homelessness. And so, yeah, we know we spent $735 on emergency shelter. We know we allocated this much for this, but we don't actually know how much. I don't know. Maybe you do. We invest in homelessness related. I mean, right now, right? These things you guys are doing, and what would this do for us? Because we need to be able to tell the story of, oh no, we're not just spending another $5 million. We're actually saving X. And there's a long-term goal. And so how do we evaluate that and tell that story to people who are asking us about this program?
I think that's a great question. And the way that I have thought about it is, and I might let Nancy correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is generally when you look at how we think about the costs that we currently spend on this, it's in the neighborhood of about $50,000 per person. Per year.
Per individual experiencing one. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that includes a whole range of services, and this is one of the reasons why it's sometimes hard to calculate, because you're including, just normal APD responses that, the cost is going to still be there, that APD is going to still have, but if we can shift some of the calls that they're currently receiving on this issue to responding to more property crime calls or doing more traffic enforcement or things like that, you're actually letting them do the core functions of their job, so the public actually sees that
There's like a double
more.
savings. You're
Absolutely.
spending less on this, but you're able to achieve it.
Yep.
So the 50,000, is that for just the muni's costs alone, or that's all the providers together and what they spend?
That is, my understanding is everyone. It's in the feasibility study, but my understanding is that it is inclusive of
Shelters.
the Department of Corrections, the shelters.
Because that then really isn't something you compare with the 4.5, because that's a broader number. So anyway,
but it's one of the reasons why, one of the arguments that we were making to the state as to why they should be fully involved and engaged with us and provide a match to what we're providing, because they're going to see some of the savings as well.
Just to chime in, we'll go around the cube, but I would comment at that. You don't have to provide any information because it's out, it's very public. $31 million a year is spent on homelessness, and all we got to do is buy them tickets back home, and it'll be solved. So that's the public message. It's getting out there very solidly. We don't need alcohol tax or any of that, because that's what's going on. And if you can't provide it, the public and us, with something that's solid, that's the message that's out there. If that's right, then it's out there and we're all good. But if you think that's not quite right, we need to get some better, very simple, concrete, something to point to. So anyway, moving on.
And I would just add, to put a bow on the conversation with on this, is that, as I said, we're already spending this money. Essentially, what we're trying to do with this is spend it in a different way that gets us actually a better outcome.
But are we spending $5 million? I mean, that's the problem. We don't know what we're spending, right? I mean, or we don't know where we're. Anyway, I think
If we get a better outcome, we will be spending it, though.
If I might, Mr. Chair, that's not the point she's making.
Yeah.
I think the point she's trying to make is if we could come up with a snapshot, a reasonable snapshot, a horseshoes level of snapshot of our expenditures, that we can then compare to what we're expending here with the intent to save, we could then really have an easier job of being an advocate or a diplomat for these questions as they come up in the hot places we have to go. And so we asked the audit department to do an investigation, and they came back with the jokiest of the joke of an audit. And not that he he tried to do something weak, but it was too hard for an auditor who thinks that way to think around the cost. And so if we could come up with just some kind of benchmark, it would be very helpful for even those of us who want to be your best advocates to be able to go to the places where it's the least friendly.
I mean, we go to the same places though, so.
We do all the time.
But we all need to be telling
Yeah,
that story,
absolutely.
right? Like, this is what
I mean,
we're
I just
saying.
wanting to make it clear, like, we
Yeah,
go to
yeah.
the same places
We just-
too, and we get the same questions, and, you know, we wanna, you know.
Suzanne?
I'll wait for the second work session.
Okay. Crystal?
I think I'll wait too, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Altel?
Yes, please. So on this chart, I have some questions, particularly around the Medicaid billing. That seems like a low number. It seems significantly low because intensive, well, that and the fact that that the cost of service delivery at $5.9 million includes intensive case management. I don't know exactly how much of that is that, but intensive case management, should these folks be qualified under the Medicaid waiver, should be fully picked up. So one, I think it should exceed unless the rate is really, really low under the Medicaid reimbursement. What I'm trying to get at is, I think, while we may do the initial upfront of $4.5 million, if these revenue generators tend to be higher, or we can offset the costs to the municipality or others with other things, like additional tenant contributions of their monthly rent, should they be higher, should they qualify for Social Security, does the municipality get any of its money back, or is it simply that we're just going to potentially expand the program? And why I'm wrestling with this is, are we gonna try this for 150 individuals, or are we just going to expand it to wherever the money allows? Sorry, that kind of wandered a bit, but.
If we have extra money, what are we gonna do with it?
Well, or if we find that there is more project revenues generated by the actual individuals and the means tested benefits and other things that they qualify, which allows them to live independently, when do we start to step away and either stop spending money, or we say we're going to expand? And where is that decision point? Who makes that decision? What does that look like? And then the last question, and I'm gonna have to go and I apologize, but why is there an MOA operations coordinator?
Okay, so I will handle those questions. I think the Medicaid one is the first. One of the challenges with providing this level of service, and one of the reasons we have 373 people who meet this profile, is that our current Medicaid programs don't meet their needs. It's a mechanism right now that's a fee for service. It's not adequate, it's not flexible, it doesn't allow for the scattered site model that we're doing. It's challenging. At best, the service providers who are able to house this population, the best number I've seen at least, is about, in the first couple of years, a 40% Medicaid recapture, because the costs are higher than what Medicaid allows. The costs are different than the categories that Medicaid allows. It's a challenging population. So
before you move away from that statement, when you say what Medicaid allows, do you mean under the state plan or waivers or everything?
Under the current fee-for-service structure, which is what we still exist under, there is an approved waiver that is not rolled out for providers yet for the services that we're talking about. There's some substance use services that are going forward, but it's not in this realm yet. So we have to work under this realm, and we're using the next 2 years as our rent-up time, the time that we're going to get people on board. And so we believe we're going to be under the existing scenario for Medicaid for much of that. We don't know how long it'll take Medicaid to get regs out and get people onboarded. So we're using the existing. So these estimates are based on a 20% recapture. But your question is a great one, because we think hopefully they'll exceed that. They'll have additional support, and hopefully they'll do better than that. And then, so how does that money get used if we don't need it for the categories that we've budgeted for? There's a steering committee that will be looking at that and evaluating that and seeing how to use the money as we go forward.
So will the steering committee determine if additional people are added to the program, or is it just a solid 150 until we figure out if we've met the outcome goals? Or will it become like roving admissions at some point? Or rolling, sorry, not roving, rolling admissions?
The governance structure will handle that. I got a lifeline.
And I can just add a little more color there. The way that the contract works, it does build a lot of the project around a specific kind of top level project size, which is in this case that's the 150 units. But as Nancy mentioned, the governance structure, which includes the executive steering committee and a management operating committee, that's how, as much as we try to design these things up front, things are always different once we get going. And so those governance committees handle various project changes that come up through the life of the project. So if we were in the situation of seeing much better revenue from Medicaid or other sources, such that it might necessitate changes in the project size or other aspects of the project, it would be handled at the governance committee level and formally voted on and approved.
And then I could quickly answer the question about the, sorry, I'm now forgetting the second one.
The operations coordinator.
Oh, the operations coordinator. So what's happening in the municipality is our data is restricted. And at the moment, the most restrictive part of data contribution for the municipality is the police department. And we have the data going out to the university to be integrated with the homeless data, and then coming back to that, to the mobile intervention team, to Melina specifically right now. And so we don't know exactly how much time and resource that's going to take on the municipality's part to serve up that list to make sure that it's correct, to integrate it with our data sources and to keep it moving.
So,
I think we're out of time.
okay, I'll preview it, I guess. So, don't we have the list already of 150 individuals?
The list will be refreshed on an ongoing basis because we always want that top group. And so if we're doing the list pull quarterly, we want to refresh it and make sure that it's up to date all the time.
So for the follow-up work session that looks like we're going to have, I'd like to know how, when people get kind of peeled off the list and put into the program, then how often are people getting peeled off the list, and kind of the mechanics of that, please?
Yep.
Thanks.
We're out of time. Go ahead.
Thank you. Quick. I think it's great you guys are doing this. This is awesome. One of my concerns has been that the public doesn't understand homelessness, and I've talked with Nancy and Jason extensively about this, and doesn't understand what the municipality is doing and has done. Lots of great things we've been doing over the last few years. Very little content out there in the world of just regular old humans who understand what's going on. How are you spreading the word about this program? And what will you do prior to it coming to the assembly to get the word out to the public?
A question for the next meeting. When will that be? When do we take action on this?
It's scheduled to take action on March 24th, so
Okay, so we have time.
We have time.
we have a couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
you can answer that next time. I want people to know what's happening.
There's another question for
Back
next time too.
information.
For next time, the question is, okay, so $5 million, the pilot project is run through. What happens then? So what's our commitment after the end of the pilot, and what do we look to for the future? So that's for the next conversation. It would be nice to understand what the next step would be. So we've done for success.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't do more.
We were fully,
Success, I
we were,
suspect, is in here.
what's that?
How we determine success, I suspect we just didn't get to.
So the punchline we missed, we will be
Around two.
on the edge of our seats until the next website. Thank you. Is
Thanks,
that it?
John, for tolerating all of us. Yeah.
Public comment, I'll give you 30 seconds. Sorry, we're out of time.
I'll be brief. Name is Eugene Haberman, live in the valley, okay, but I don't have that many seconds. You've not completed your presentation. Where's a copy? Please email it to eugene@mtaonline.net. Appreciate that. But is this set for public hearing Tuesday? If this is not a completed presentation, you're going to have a public hearing on Tuesday? No, it's not
March
good.
24th.
24th?
March.
Thanks for the clarification, because I saw it for reading for February 25th, so I was curious if it was going to be attended. That's all I have to say, except my email address is eugene@mtaonline.net. Appreciate if you can send that presentation.
Thank you.